Guten Morgen, ihr Lieben.
Good morning.
Ja, leider schon der letzte Tag.
It's sad but true. It's the last day already. Time flies.
Das ganze Jahr darauf.
We look forward to this event the whole year, and then everybody's excited about getting together and meeting again, and now it's Sunday, and all that's left is a few more presentations before we have to say goodbye. That's a pity. In any case, we're glad you're here on this Sunday morning, and we look forward to the next two presentations, especially this one. And I've invited someone to present our next speaker, and we'll hand the microphone over. Hello, my name is Joshua Wolf.
Ich sage die Nancy an.
I'm here to introduce Nancy.
Der Titel heißt
And the title of her presentation in English is Adulting,
It Can Be Done.
It Can Be Done.
Werden.
And it has a German title too, Erwachsenwerden.
Am I on? Okay. Good morning. What a party last night. Everyone was having so much fun with the dancing. It was beautiful to watch. I am here basically to give you an overview of what our son's life looks like now, which is going to sound a lot like the adult panel you had yesterday in some ways. But I'm going to tell you the ins and outs of how we got these things done. I understand that all of the systems are different in Germany than in the U.S. I presented this at the U.S. conference, and Claudia asked me to bring it here. So in some ways, it's more a discussion of possibilities, of things that you could work toward and dream about and hope for you or for your child. So how did we get Jacob to the life he has now? So these are the things I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk about Jacob's life now and what it looks like, how we handled housing, the funding for everything we are doing with him, the staff that we use, what he does on a daily basis, the things that we address for safety issues, and then the things that work. So I'm going to start with Jacob's life now. So this is Jacob. He's 35 years old. This is what his life looks like now. There you see a picture of him firstborn. I was much younger, so was Tim. And he had the stents coming out of his nose for several months, as a lot of our children do. There he is in the neonatal intensive care when he was first born. This is Jacob on a ski trip. Our state has a deafblind project that takes all the individuals with deafblindness on a ski hill once a year, and Jacob really loves that. I believe this is Jacob at our church. Here he is riding his trike that he loves to ride around the neighborhood, and just some happy pictures. He loves to be in the swimming pool and in the hot tub. I should note that, I think we've noted this already, Jacob's abilities are that he has, in terms of formal communication, he uses a little bit of sign, he uses pictures, he understands maybe 75 signs, and but pretty much the communication works well for him, the situations we use we use all these different kinds of communication with him, and it works for him. So the only thing we have trouble communicating is where his pain is. That's just been very difficult to teach him how to show us that. So we've learned through some of his behaviors. We've learned through some of his behaviors what they might mean in terms of his communication of pain. All right. Housing. So this is Jacob's home. This is the inside of his home. He lives just next door to us. So we have a pretty nice home on a corner in a residential neighborhood of our small town. And the woman who lived next door to us when we moved in was not a very nice person. She used to yell at our children if they came in her yard to get a ball out of the yard that they lost or something. She was pretty nasty. But when she was 95, she passed away, And we had always thought about, I wonder if we could get that house for Jacob, because we had thought all along since he was a young child that we wanted him to have his own house in our neighborhood where we could, keep a look after him. So she passed away, and we talked to her children who were in their 70s. They didn't need another house, right? So they were willing to sell it to us at a very low cost, and they were very excited to have Jacob live there. So we purchased this house for him, which is something the state did not do for us. We purchased it, so we own it. Jacob pays us rent every month. We had to go in the house, and it was completely as she had left it. And we put large pieces of paper on all the walls, and we had a whole bunch of people who loved Jacob come to the house. And everyone was to write on the walls what they think Jacob should have in that particular room. So some of his younger friends wrote things like, a room full of bubbles, because Jacob loves bubbles, right? So that's not so easy to do, but we talked about having a hot tub, which he now has. He has a spa in one room. He spends a lot of time in there. We talked about having a swing, which he now has. Lights all over the walls, which he now has. Basically, all of the things except for the room full of bubbles have been accomplished in his home. So we had our contractor come in, and again, this is something we paid for to make the home look the way we wanted for Jacob. Our contractor built this window seat for Jacob here, and his mother actually made the cushion for Jacob that's waterproof, so if he has an accident, we can change the outer part. So this is his window seat. He spends a lot of time lying there because, as David Brown told you, he needs to be lying on his side a lot to make his vision work for him, so he spends a lot of time lying there, spends a lot of time in the hot tub. He's got all the lights on that he can ask for. Over here, you can't really see it very well, but Tim's sister painted a huge mural across one wall, which is very beautiful. We actually had our minister come just before Jacob moved in, and we had sort of a housewarming party, but we called it a house blessing, and he came in and he blessed the house. We kind of called it an exorcism, just because we kind of didn't want that lady's energy in the home anymore. So we wanted it to become Jacob's home. All right. So funding. Again, this was made for the U.S., so I was explaining people how we do it in the U.S. I know you have funding for things here. I'm not exactly sure how they work, but I have talked to Claudia, and it seems very similar. So we have Medicaid is the federal project, a federal law that allows people with disabilities to have medical insurance and help with their lives in the U.S. And so Medicaid has something called home and community-based services. And what that means is that you can opt to take the money you would get for your child to be in an institutional life or in a group home, and they will release the funding to you, and the child or the individual or their family has the choice of what to do with it. So institutions are getting less and less in the United States. People are opting more and more for living in their communities, in either group homes or in their own homes or in apartments. And so, it says see handout. There's no handout here, sorry. So Jacob has what's called a habilitation waiver, and that's where they waive the option to be in an institution and allow us to control the money. Through an agency, we don't really control the money. We have to follow a lot of rules, but Jacob gets to use it to live the way he wants to. So Jacob has a budget of, I think it's $130,000 a year now this year, and that pays for his staffing. So he has staffing around the clock. And we like to say Jacob lives in his own home. He lives alone, but he always has a staff person there. But it's his house. Then we have another source of funding called chore services, and this is funding for people with disabilities or elderly people who need help in their homes with things like grocery shopping or cooking or cleaning or doing laundry, and people will come in and assist them for a couple of hours a week to do those things. For Jacob, those hours just fold into his regular hours. So we have two sources of funding, And then he has food stamps, which is another federal program that provides money for food for people who are very poor. It's not very much money. I think he gets $115 a month or something. It's ridiculous, but every tiny little bit helps. And then the other thing he gets in the United States, we have something called Social Security Income, SSI, and people with disabilities can apply for this and get this kind of funding to help them with living expenses. So many people will use it to pay their rent, pay for any extras that their food stamps don't pay for, things like that. So Jacob had this Social Security income for many years, and then when his father retired, they kicked him off of that and said he now has to access a fund called Disabled Adult Child. So when Tim retired and started to receive his own elderly person Social Security, does that translate here? Okay. Then Jacob had to also access those funds. So Jacob now gets Disabled Adult Child Social Security through Tim's retirement account. And it's 3 times as much as he was getting. So it's a nice amount of money. No, it doesn't affect Tim's at all. And in fact, we have another son who has lupus, just been identified with lupus and very ill, and we've just applied for him to get it as well. He doesn't have other disabilities besides health. So it's a nice program. So Jacob gets, I think, $1,800 a month for that, which is quite a bit for someone who doesn't use electronics or have a cell phone or those kinds of costs or a car, the kind of costs that the rest of us usually have to pay for. So sometimes I have to take the money and spend it down because he's only allowed to have $2,000 in his account. So it'll be, Jacob needs new clothes, or let's get Jacob some new furniture, or, something like that. So that's where the funding comes from. This is often the most difficult, and I heard in yesterday's session that I was doing with about older adults and their families that finding staff is very, very difficult here. We're very fortunate that we live in a college town, and Tim was a professor at the college, so we have this huge number of students living in our town looking for work while they're going to school. So we use that as our recruitment strategy, and you can see here that we have lots of college students. We've had so many over the years. We started this in 2010, so it's been 14 years. And so every year we recruit college students to be Jacob's staff. It is intensive in terms of hiring and training because each one has to be trained not just on deafblindness and charge syndrome, but on Jacob specifically. But we have worked out a way to do that. So here's some things that people have posted on Facebook that they just really adore him. So we use college students, first of all, because they're there. It's easier to find people. But second of all, because many of them are very curious, they're very energetic, they want to learn. We try to find people who are studying special education, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language therapy, audiology, recreational therapy, anything where they could use their learning to help Jacob and where Jacob can help them learn in a practical way. And it works really well. We get a lot of turnover is a big issue. Jacob, because he has college students, they don't want to work full time, so they just have smaller numbers of hours. We usually have 14 people working at any one time for him. So only one at a time with him, but each one will do 2 shifts a week or 3 shifts a week and do some overnights and things like that. And we've just over the years found that 14 is the right number. If there are 13, we can't cover some shifts, and if there are 15, they aren't getting enough shifts to help pay their bills. So it works out that way. We have a lot of turnover. So every year, probably about a third of the staff graduates from college and leaves town. So we have to hire 5, 6 more people. And every spring, it's a lot of work for me to do that, but I have assistance through the staff. So we have 2 lead staff, 2 people that get paid more than the other staff. One oversees the home and makes sure all the scheduling is done, so I don't have to schedule the students at all. I don't have to do that. They run our staff meetings along with me. They make sure that things in the home are kept up, that Jacob's picture communication system is kept up and clean and organized. What else do? They act as a liaison from the other staff to myself, so if there's a problem, I don't have everyone texting me in general. They will text me with the issue that's happening if it's something they can't handle. So it's taken a great burden off of me to have that lead staff person to do all of that. I used to do all of the scheduling and everything, and it was like having another full-time job trying to administer all of that. And then the second lead staff person takes care of all the agency communication that doesn't need my approval. So she will make sure everyone has all of their required trainings finished. They have to do things annually, like CPR annually and first aid and fire safety and all these things, and she makes sure that everyone gets those done and turned in. She does all the hiring paperwork, which can take hours and hours because there's a lot of agency paperwork, a lot of requirements from each of the 2 agencies we work with, and a lot of them are the same, so you have to do some things twice. It's ridiculously, it's a ridiculous paperwork burden, but she does it, so I don't have to anymore. And it was really great when the agency approved us to have 2 lead staff. It just took so much off of me. It was wonderful. What was that? Oh, that was my water bottle cap. Okay, so how do we get these people trained? Again, this has been difficult, but over the years we've put it together. So one of the things they do is they go through some charge syndrome modules that I have put together that include, the first one is just basics of charge syndrome. The second one, I believe, is the medical issues. The third one is communication, and there's a behavior one, and I can't remember what the 5th one is. Anyway, but they tend to cover most of the general ideas about charge and how it affects Jacob. So they do those remotely. I send them to them via email. They are to read them. They look at the Charge Syndrome Foundation website. I give them some videos to watch from Perkins School for the Blind of David Brown and some other people talking about charge syndrome. And when they finished looking at each one, they're supposed to email me back with things they've learned so that it's just a check for me to know that they actually did it, right? So they do the charge syndrome one, and then I have another one that's more extensive on deaf blindness. And they know that they're not allowed to do any training with Jacob until they've completed these modules. They're important, they have to be done first. Then they do the required trainings that are required by the agencies. Most of them are kind of silly, like there's one called corporate compliance. There's one about the Whistleblowers Act, which means if they see us doing something illegal and report us, they can't be fired. Just some silly, really, paperwork stuff that they just sign, and they don't even read them, they just sign them. So that's the training that the agency has to do with them. Then we had to come up with how are we going to train them to work with Jacob. So we came up with this training protocol. One of his longtime caregivers and I worked on this over a summer one year, and we just wrote out everything we could think of that you needed to know about Jacob and how to train to work with him. And it went from, here are his medical issues, there's a whole long thing about how he communicates and how we communicate with him, trust, deaf blindness, giving him wait time, how to help him use the toilet, how to prepare his meals, just everything you could think of. What happens in the morning shift, what happens in the evening shift, how do we brush his teeth, how do we help him use the hot tub, where does he go to work, and how do we do that? So it's all written down for them, and it is infused with videos. So we have a video, like how do we help Jacob brush his teeth? He has a certain routine that he understands and knows, but if the person doing it with him doesn't know the routine, he's going to get frustrated. So how do we brush his teeth, give the instructions, show the video of how we help him do it, so everybody can go back and refer to those over and over again as they start working with Jacob. They are asked to read that training protocol, and then when they are going through their initial trainings with one of the lead staff, they actually go through the protocol with them and demonstrate. Okay, so then we have shift training. So our agency has approved for Jacob to have 12 hours of staff training for each staff member that will be paid. So they get paid to come in for 12 hours and train. We require another 3 hours. So we require them to do 15 because it just takes, well, actually, I wish it was more, right? There's so much to know about our kids. So they come in and the first shift, they go through the training protocol with the individual that's training them. 4-hour shifts, yeah, each shift is 4 hours. So they'll come in the evening and they'll just go through the training protocol, maybe observe Jacob with another staff member. The second shift, they come in and they will watch someone prepare a meal and give him a bath and do the morning routine. The third shift, they will come in and they start doing some hands-on things with Jacob, including taking him on an outing, because sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes Jacob doesn't like to get out of the car. We have this whole routine where he'll sit there and hold his seatbelt like this because he doesn't want to get out to go to work or whatever he has to do that day. And, we have this whole set of steps, behavioral steps to do to get him out, including get in on the other side and start scooting your body next to him. And that works, and he will hook his feet under the front seat. He'll do everything. Often I end up being called. They'll text me and say, hey, we're at the grocery store and Jacob won't get out. I've been trying for 45 minutes. And I say, okay, I'll be right over. I go over, I say, hi, Jacob, and he gets right out because it's me, right? So sometimes we still have to do those kinds of things. So at the end of their 15 hours of training, we tell them, you can have as much training as you want. If you're not comfortable, come back, we'll do more. You just won't be paid for it. And no one's ever really taken us up on that. The other thing that we tell them is, you're not really fully trained until you start working with Jacob. You can't really understand until he starts training you himself, because he does a lot of the training. And I have to say, he's very adaptable. He doesn't seem to mind terribly when people leave. He has that kind of autistic-like tendency of not being attached to people so much as to things. So people leave, new people come. He doesn't seem to be very sad about that. He does get frustrated if they don't really know what they're doing. I just can imagine in his mind he's thinking, oh my God, I have to train another person, just the way I feel. And it's a matter of gaining his trust and feeling more confident. And after 2 or 3 shifts, they usually are able to get into a routine. A lot of it, Jacob just shows them. They may be thinking, oh my gosh, I can't remember how we make his breakfast drink. And Jacob will get up in the morning and he'll go get the blender cap and he'll get the cup out and he'll start getting all the food out that needs to go in the blender and he'll help them put it in. So, he knows the routines well enough that together they work it out. I have also a little module that I do with some of the people who are working, who have been there for a while, called Train the Trainers, where I actually sit down with them and I say, when you do training, this is how I want you to do it. Because I had found that a lot of things were being missed. People weren't following the protocol. People weren't going through what they needed to. And so I had to say, you have to do this. You have to make sure they read through this. You need to go through all these videos with them. A lot of it was being missed. And so once I've done that, I'm confident that they know what to do to train other people. Okay, on call. We have found over the years that we need a person to be on call each weekend. Because they're college students, many people often go home for the weekend. They travel back to their families, or they have late nights, or they want to go to the football game, the American football game at the college, or things like that. Or someone wants to go out drinking, and I don't know about Germany, but marijuana is legal in our state now. Is it legal here? Oh, okay. So there are a lot of dispensaries in our town suddenly. It's kind of crazy. So there's a lot of that going around. So just, and I don't mind if they drink or smoke weed. I just don't want them to be high or drunk when they're working, right? But they're college students. I'm not going to take that away from them and be very strict about that. So we do have them sign up to be on call on the weekends. So each semester is about 15 weeks long, college semester, and so each one signs up for one weekend, 15 people, 15 weekends. So we just say, you are responsible this weekend for being around in case someone gets sick or has an emergency. And it doesn't get used very often, but we did have one young man whose mother had a heart attack in the middle of the weekend, and he was supposed to work. So he called the weekend on-call person. They came, took all of his shifts. He drove home to be with his mother. And it was used a lot during when COVID was big, I've got COVID, can't come into work for 2 weeks. Okay, we need the on-call person to take the weekend shifts. During the week, if someone is ill, often other people will pick up their shifts and you don't need an on-call person. But the weekends have a little bit more scarcity of people around. A lot of charting has to be done. If you go into Jacob's staff room, so he has his own bedroom, and then there's a room for staff, and it has a bed for them to sleep in at night because he doesn't usually get up at night. And then there's a desk with lots and lots of charting. So we chart how many times he has a bowel movement because he has chronic constipation, and if it gets too infrequent, we have to change his medication. We chart how many accidents he has had, how many times he has urinated during the day, how many meals he's had, how many drinks he's had, all of the health things that he can't really communicate to us. I'm thirsty, I haven't had enough, all of these things. We try to keep a chart on just so that the next person who comes in knows what needs to happen. He hasn't had much to drink this morning. We need to try to push some fluids, that kind of thing. We chart whether or not he's already been in the hot tub that day, because Jacob would choose to be in there all day if we allowed it. How many times he's had pudding, because he would choose to eat a whole bowl of pudding if he could. And again, we try to give him as many choices as possible. I think that's why he's happy in his life. He can choose things within his routine. But just like all of us, he has things he has to do, and then he gets to choose the things he wants to do. And there's a balance. And, I can do a pretty big ice cream binge sometimes if I'm upset. You could eat a whole quart of ice cream, right? And sometimes he wants to binge on pudding. And that's okay, but we know that it makes his stomach upset. So we kind of have to limit some things. Yes, you've had some, you can have some more later, you can have some more tomorrow, but eating 6 bowls of pudding is probably not gonna make you feel too good. So we try to teach the carers to find a balance between helping him choose his life and be independent and live the way he wants to, but at the same time keeping him healthy and getting him to his work jobs and making sure we're monitoring if he's sick and things like that. At the same time, they're taught to help him be as independent as possible. He can put on his own shoes and socks. Some of them don't realize it until a different carer tells them that. Oh, he's been making me put them on. No, he can do that himself. He can get his own seatbelt on. Well, he always makes me do it. So we try to help him be as independent as possible, and we tell them that as a deafblind intervener, that is your job, to help him gain as much independence as possible. Timesheets. I don't remember I think I was just talking about that. They have to fill out timesheets for the agency where they have to talk about what they did during the shift and how many hours they worked. And all of that gets turned in once a week, so they get paid to the agencies. And finally, there are also chores at his home. I don't know if I've addressed this later, but there's a list of chores that have to be done weekly, because not only are we helping Jacob live his life, we have to keep his home clean, and taken care of. So every week, every day, there are 5 chores that have to be done by staff, and they're split between shifts. So in the morning, maybe somebody mops and sweeps the kitchen. And in the afternoon, someone has to cook 2 meals for Jacob that then get frozen. They're pureed, so he has lots of pureed frozen meals. And if somebody doesn't get something done because Jacob had an appointment or was ill and not doing well and needed a lot of attention, the people in the evening pick up and finish those chores. We had a plumber come into his home once last year and, to do some help with that bathtub or something. And he said, "This is the cleanest house I've ever been in." So I like that. That made me happy. We use a online scheduling system called whentowork.com. I don't know if you can get it here or not, but it's really nice. I think I pay $200 a year for it, and it's our scheduling software. The students go in and they can actually use a paintbrush to make red all of the times that they cannot work. Like, I have classes these times. I have a wedding to go to on this Saturday. I have an appointment here. And they all do that, and then you put in the shifts you need, all the schedules you need, and then you can just click a little button that says autofill, and it automatically gives people shifts when they can work. It's a really nice system. We usually have to go in and fiddle with it and change things here and there to make sure people aren't getting 6 shifts in one day or coming at 9 o'clock in the morning again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Just kind of fiddle with some of the AI things in there, but it's a really nice system. It makes things a lot easier because I started out with a spreadsheet of 15 people and 5 shifts a day over the week, and trying to work that all out myself was very difficult. All right. Here we have life at home. Here's the large mural that Tim's sister painted. It's about as big as this screen. It's very nice. She came to visit us, and we were watching the World Cup, and she'd come into our house and watch the World Cup game, and then she'd go back over to Jacob's and paint some more. Then she'd come and watch another World Cup game, go back to Jacob's and paint some more. Jacob uses the picture exchange communication system to communicate with us. So when he wants something, these are for requests, often he will ask for things like, there's his bike, if you can see that up there. These are different stores he can go to. There's his hot tub. He likes to go to the coffee shop and get a smoothie of some sort, go in the car, go to get ice cream, go swimming, so go for a walk. All of those things are up there for him at any time. He takes the picture off and puts it on a sentence strip and takes another thing off that says, "I want." So, I want to go to Target. Do you have Target here? Oh, no, okay, it's a store. He likes to go to Target. I want to go to Target, then he hands it to you, and then you know what it is he wants. Okay, so he was trained to do that in school. It's very effective for him to feel like he has power over his activities. And we tell the students, if Jacob comes to you at 8:30 at night, and you've got him all ready to get in bed and says, "I want to go to Target," you take him to Target, because he's a 35-year-old man, and if I want to go to Target at 8:30 at night, I can, so why shouldn't he be able to? So that's, the ability to give him choices in his life and make it his life about him. We use a schedule. This is his weekly schedule up here. So this is his work schedule, and you can see it says Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So he can look at the beginning of the week and see what his week is going to look like. So he's got, right now, it must be Saturday because we're still showing what's on the day. At the end of each day, he pulls off and puts in a finished envelope the things that have completed that day, so he knows this day is done, we're going on to the next day. It's just like when you look at your calendar on your phone, it doesn't show you yesterday, it just shows you today and the next day and the next day. So he can see what's coming, just like we can look at our calendar and see what's going on today. Today, I have to give a presentation at 9 o'clock. I have a consultation at 10:20. I have to eat lunch and then go to Frankfurt to get a plane, right? That's my schedule for today, and I look at it in the morning, and I can prepare myself emotionally, mentally for that. So he has his work schedule up there. So, it may say Monday, I'm going to do this job, and then in the afternoon, I'm going to do this job, and then in the evening, I'm at home. so he can see exactly what's going to happen that day. Activities at his home. He has to do some chores. He has to do his laundry every morning. He takes his dirty clothes and puts them in the washing machine, and then later puts them in the dryer and puts them away in his drawers. He has chores like that. He has to help with the dishes. But then he has all these really fun things like the hot tub that he loves to be in. The trampoline, he has a trampoline in his backyard. It's basically a $500 blanket because he doesn't jump on it, he just lies on it. But he likes it, and it keeps him off the ground so there aren't insects and things like that. And understand in my English, I just wrote tramp, which is short for trampoline. We call it a tramp in the United States. And Claudia didn't know what that was. Jacob is not a tramp. Say again? Yeah. So then he's got his bathtub that he likes to be in. He's got his window seat that I showed you, and his bicycle that he likes to ride. So outside of his work jobs, he can do all of these things and ask to go to all of these places. So he has a lot of activities. I mean, I have my activities that I do in my home regularly. I read, I take a nap. I have a pottery studio. I go out and do pottery. I watch television, right? Those are my normal daily routines that I do for my leisure. So he has his leisure activities as well. What happens outside of home? Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Ich habe mich nur gefragt.
I was wondering the following. You were telling us about the 14 different carers, interveners. And you said that he is quite autistic and doesn't care too much who's taking care of him. But are you showing him for each shift who's coming? Does he know who's coming? Is he more excited about some than about others, or is it all the same for him? And what about authority? Are there some who can tell him, no, we cannot go for a bicycle ride now because you have to go to work? And does he listen to that? Because you said that some have more authority to get him out of the car, for example, and others need you to do it and tell him, now you have to get out of the car. So how does he perceive the 14 different people? And how, when they leave what about if they leave after 2 to 3 years? Because we saw that with our daughter. Sometimes she developed a close relationship and then the person left because something didn't work out, for example, and then it took her 2 to 3 months to recover, so to say.
We are very fortunate that Jacob is very adaptable. We do cue him when people are leaving for their shift. They say goodbye to him. He pretty much just goes, go away, bye, go. And the new person says hello. So he knows a different person has come in. He notices a big difference between those who have been there for a while and that he trusts and he knows they understand him, and new people. So he will sometimes give new people a really hard time at first. For instance, they take him for a walk and he'll lie down on the grass and just laugh because he knows they don't know what to do. Or go to the grocery store and lie down on the floor. He will sometimes give them a hard time or not do what they want. He knows they're new, but he's also, he's 35. He's not an adolescent. He's got a fully adult brain. And I think he's just gotten used to the routine of people coming and going. Again, he's never been terribly sad when people left or attached the way maybe your daughter is. So in that, that's a sad thing that he doesn't get attached to people, but it's also fortunate for him. And they get very attached to him. They get very sad when they have to leave. We do have a picture of each of them that he can look at. He does discriminate between them. He obviously knows me. I'm his mother, and we have certain routines. As soon as he sees me, he will ask for things because he knows I do things for him that others don't. As soon as he sees me, he will quickly tell me to take off my cardigan or jacket. For some reason, he doesn't want me to have sleeves. I don't understand. I'm the only person he does that to. Every time he sees me, if I have that on, he has to take it off. It's a routine, but it tells me that he knows it's me. He knows his dad because if people are having a hard time getting him out of his hot tub, sometimes he just refuses to get out. He sees dad, he gets right out. In terms of the hot tub and the car, sometimes it doesn't matter if someone's been with him. We have one woman who's been working with him for 14 years, and the other day he wouldn't get out of the car for her for an hour. And she has, she knows, she's very good with him, and she knows him well, and he was just giving her a hard time. Sometimes he doesn't do it because he doesn't feel well. But you can kind of tell by his grimaces and his mood if he's giving you a hard time and laughing at you or crying because he doesn't feel good. I don't want to go to work. I have an ear infection or something. So yes, he does discriminate between people, and you can tell by the way he treats them. He does not get sad when they leave. So that's why we're fortunate to be able to have so much turnover, and he's okay with it. If he wasn't, it would be a lot more difficult. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Habt ihr es mal versucht?
Have you ever tried doing a video call? So dad video calling him for him to get out of the hot tub, so showing him the phone with his dad's face, and now you have to get out of the hot tub? Maybe you can give that a try and tell me next time how that went.
We could try it. We've never used, he doesn't really use, well, he does look at pictures on the screen. It could work, we could see. But he also has a very good routine of, if he sees you coming, he'll look away or cover his eyes. Like, if I can't see you, you can't see me, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Ja, ich habe auch noch eine Frage, und zwar,
I also have a question. What when Jacob gets sick? Do the students still come in when he's sick? So when he has a cold, for example, because nobody wants to catch that from him.
Right. If he gets sick, he's getting it from them. They bring so many germs in from their university classes. They come in, they work. They worked all during the COVID pandemic. It was amazing how many of them continued. We sanitized everything. They wore masks. Jacob never got COVID until last year. He finally got it once. And even when he had COVID, they were all fine with it because by now for them, COVID is like nothing to them. They're young, they get over it quickly. So it really doesn't bother them when he's sick. He's not typically very contagious. It's usually an ear infection or a stomach problem. So they don't typically pick things up from him. And they use good hand washing protocol. And yeah, we have had a few times where so many people are sick that we've had to go over for a few hours and, fill in. But for the most part, we maybe do that 5 or 6 times a year, maybe. I'd like to get it to 0 because I'd like the system to work when I'm gone, right? But, occasionally we have to it's very easy to just walk over and get him out of the hot tub, drive over to the grocery store and help them. It's a mile. We live in a small town, so right now it's still working, and they're all showing up. So, other questions before I move on? Oh, I'm almost out of time. Okay, these are the things he does outside of home. This is one of his jobs. It's called Jacob Can, and in Michigan we have bottle and can return money. Do you have that here? Okay, yes. So when we buy soda, we pay 10 cents per can or bottle in Michigan. It's just a state thing, different in different states. And when you send them back, you get your 10 cents back. So people will donate cans and bottles to Jacob because people accumulate them and they don't want to deal with it. They just don't want to take them back. So they just give them to him. And so every day he takes 2 pretty small bags to the grocery store and he knows how to put them in the machines and get the receipt and get the money. He knows how to do that whole routine. And then at the end of every 2 years, he has about, I would say, average $500. And he donates it to the Syndrome Foundation for their families to be able to come to conferences. So he has no idea he's doing that, really, but it's good work, that we can feel good about. He doesn't really need the money himself, and I don't want people to give him charity in the way of giving him cans. That's not the purpose of it. The Children's Museum, we have a children's museum that has a large wall full of these colored pegs with lights behind them. And he goes twice a week, and his job is to get a basket and put the colored pegs in the basket, and then he walks them over to a room where he dips them in sanitized liquid, dries them off, puts them back in the basket, and then puts them back on the wall. And this is work that really fits him because he loves lights. He loves colors. And his favorite color is yellow. And that's one way we know that he's got some sharp color vision. The eye doctors cannot figure that, what he can actually see. They don't think he sees color, but I say, I know he sees color because he'll always pick all the yellow ones out. So the yellow ones get cleaned quite a bit. I don't know about the other colors. And what's interesting about that is he doesn't go before the museum opens. He goes during their time that they're open. So all these community people, these families, and these children see Jacob, and they are getting exposed to someone with more significant disabilities. And it's good for them, too, to know him. This is grocery shopping. He does weekly his own shopping. This is just driving in the car. We have had in the past some pre-physical therapy students who have taken him to a local indoor pool because it's Michigan, it's cold most of the year, and done some physical therapy exercises that we have already had prescribed for him in the pool twice a week, which is really nice. They love to get that experience. What is that a picture of? Oh, he likes to go over to the university. They love to take him to the university because that's, where that's their place. So they take him around to the different buildings and to the different ponds and inside some of the buildings. There's one building where he loves to go in and walk up the stairs, walk all the way across the building and down the stairs, and then go back and start again. So he gets all of his steps in, gets a lot of good exercise, but he loves it. And then going for coffee dates. So often, a lot of them are friends. They've either made friends at Jacobs or they were friends before and recommended each other to be Jacobs workers. So they'll say, hey, I'm taking Jacob over to Starbucks. Do you want to come and meet us? We'll have a coffee date. So even though they're paid to be with him, they really are his buddies. Incidentally, this woman right here, same person right here, Gretchen, she met Jacob's brother. They were both working at Jacob's house at the same time, and now they're married. They're on their honeymoon after 2 years of marriage and on an Alaskan cruise right now. We've had several people become couples meeting at Jacob's house, which is really nice. Yeah. Okay, health and safety. How do we keep Jacob safe? I know that's huge for most of us as parents, right? Especially our child has more severe disabilities and can't tell you when they're not feeling well, can't express whether they feel safe in their home or where they are. I've heard some people talk about this week. So, he has medications. They are trained in how to give him his medications. Sometimes they make mistakes, which is very disconcerting to me. We have one or two particular people right now that I'm a little worried about and we may need to let go because they're not being meticulous about these things. Shots, that's another one that Claudia didn't know what that meant, shots. What I meant by that is immunizations. So he gets testosterone shots every 2 weeks. The caregivers take him to the doctor's office. The nurse knows him. He knows the routine. He pulls up his shorts, they give him the shot and he leaves. He has lots of lab and doctor's appointments, as do a lot of our kids. Most of it's pretty routine for him. Ear infections have been a lot, and he also has had many bowel obstructions, which Kim was that in this conference or the professional? This one, okay. Was talking about his case of the bowel obstructions and the twist in the bowel. But in general, he's a very healthy individual. I think he has good good immunology. He has a brother now who has, a more typical brother who has celiac disease and lupus. And I often say that he's more disabled than Jacob because he can't work right now, and he can't go to school, and he's just in pain all the time. This is a secure doorbell, so it attaches to his front door, and whenever anybody comes in or out, you hear this little music come on, and it makes us feel more secure that Jacob's not going to elope, walk out the door while they're sleeping or something like that. That would wake them up. He's never done that. I don't think he wants to leave home without a person. I think he has a sense that he's not safe without someone with him. So he typically does not do that, but it makes us feel better. And we allow them to sleep while he's asleep, and they know that's a helpful thing. Going to the hospital. So when Jacob gets a bowel obstruction, going to the hospital is a big deal because I have to ask the caregivers if they're willing to go sit with him there. I mean, I'm there most of the day. But at night, if he's sleeping, they can be with him. I can go home and sleep and have more energy for the next day. You all know what that's like, right? Being in hospitals is exhausting. And our hospital is 1 block from our home, so it's very simple. But it's been difficult because the agency will not pay for his care while in the hospital. They say, I don't know if this will translate, they say it's double dipping. Yeah, so because Medicaid pays for hospital care and Medicaid pays for his home care, and so the hospital should be providing his one-on-one care at the hospital. And I'm not going to let just anyone sit with him who doesn't know anything about his communication. That's just not going to work for me. So we usually end up paying for that out of our own money when he's in the hospital. What works? First, I want to explain these things down at the bottom here. These are memes that one of Jacob's caregiver made. This is the one who's been with him for 14 years. She just loves him. And she got this picture of him, and she thought it looked like a sexy man saying, "Hey, girl." So she started saying, "Just try to get me out of the car. I dare you." "Hey, girl, I like the way you look at me when I empty my dresser." When he's very upset, he will go and pull all the clothes out of his dresser and throw them on the floor. And then this one, are you familiar with this? Blue steel. So she got a picture and it says, "I believe that look is called blue steel." She just loves him so much. I love her. What works? Okay, we have an app called Group Me. I don't know if you have that here or what it's called, but all of the staff are on it. It's a chatting app, and you have all 15 staff and myself are on the Group Me, and they can contact each other. "Hey, can anyone take my 7 p.m. shift? I'm not feeling well." "Hey, Jacob seems to be out of this medicine. Has anybody called it into the pharmacy? Does anybody know where Jacob's cochlear implant went?" That one comes through sometimes. And last week, someone texted back and said, "Oh, yes, I think I left it outside in the grass." When he was lying on the grass in the front yard. Oh, yeah. So they had to go hunt for it. So that works really well. And they're not allowed to put anything personal on there or to get angry at each other. It's very professional. And sometimes someone will just put a really fun picture of Jacob on it, or I will, or I'll ask things like, "Hey, everybody, get your availability up for next month by the 15th because we're doing the schedule." Things like that. That works really well. The lead staff I've already talked about. The on-call I've already talked about. The fresh eyes and new ideas. This is, I think, something that's really inherent to having college students. I have seen in our community people working with individuals with disabilities at the schools, in workshops, and in group homes. And there are some really wonderful people out there, but there are a lot of people who are just one level above the people with disabilities intellectually, if you know what I mean. It's a very low-paying job, so it's a job they can get. And I've seen people be quite abusive And I just never wanted that for Jacob. I never wanted institutional life, group home, or a workshop, because in our community, I haven't seen any in your community, but in our community, some of those people just don't understand, and it's very frustrating, and I didn't want Jacob to have to deal with that. So having college students come in, even though it's a big pain in the butt to have to keep hiring and rehiring and rehiring and rehiring, they all come in excited. They all come in wanting to try new things, wanting to learn. They feel intellectually stimulated. They can use the information they're getting in their future career. They're excited about that because they're studying speech and language, so learning this picture system is important to them. They're studying recreational therapy, so learning how to take Jacob to places and do recreational things with him are important to them. It means we have a ton of repetition of information. So we have a team meeting every month. That's another thing that works well. They're paid to come. They come for an hour. We sit and we talk about, we notice people aren't getting the sink clean, and this is kind of gross when this is happening. Make sure you're doing this and make sure you're doing that. And has anybody noticed that Jacob's kitchen sink has a leak? We need to take care of that. But we also tell really fun stories. But we have to remind people of things over and over. And April, this woman who's been there for 14 years, she just rolls her eyes. She says, how many times have we told them this? And I say, yes, but this is a different set of people. We have to keep doing it over and over again. And a lot of them will come in and say, hey, I had this idea to try with Jacob. What do you think? And sometimes I'll say, wow, that's a really interesting idea. Go ahead and try it. And sometimes I say, oh, yeah, we've done that. We've done that many times, and it doesn't work. So, but it's really interesting that they're excited to try that. All right. Yes.
Wenn du sagst, viele Sachen.
So you were saying that some of the things that you discuss at the meeting are a repetition of information you've already shared. Did you ever put anything in writing, for instance?
Für alle sozusagen als basic.
So like the basic information that everybody needs to have?
Info da sein.
Like an information sheet or something? Did you prepare something like that? Where you say this is the fundamentals that everybody should know? Did you?
Yes, we have the training protocol that I talked about earlier. It's probably 40 pages long of writing, but some of them read it once and refer back to it a few times, but they don't keep the information the way we do as parents. So they need reminders. Yeah. It's just part of the continuing training to keep saying, don't forget that you can't have chunks in Jacob's blended food. He won't eat it if it's chunky at all. You have to get it really smooth. Small things like that. There's so much to learn at the beginning that it's hard, I think, for them to get it all without reminders. So that's how we use that. Okay, struggles. Almost finished here. Problems we've had, we've talked about the turnover of staff. It's hard. Every spring we go through this. Well, usually starting in January, I start asking staff, tell people we need workers. Tell your friends. Tell your young friends. So we'll have, last year we had a lot of people graduating. I think 7 people graduated, or 8 this past spring. They don't have any young friends because all their friends are graduating. So every couple of years we have to recruit differently. So we will contact professors at the university in these different areas, special education, recreational therapy, and say, can you please advertise this to your students? But we really like it when people recommend their friends, because they love Jacob and they wouldn't recommend somebody that they didn't trust to be with him. And that works really well for us. Okay, yeah, we talked about this already. We just talked about this, the understanding everything, dilution of information, and repetitive reminders. So I trained someone to work with Jacob 10 years ago. And they trained somebody else, who trained somebody else, who trained somebody else, who trained somebody else. A lot of information gets lost. For instance, I don't know how many of you have this issue, but Jacob does not have lacrimal ducts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Tear ducts. So all the crusty stuff just comes out of his eyes. And I'll have a student say to me, Jacob's got a lot of stuff coming out of his eye. Do you think he has conjunctivitis? Then I have to explain. Didn't anybody ever tell you he doesn't have lacrimal ducts, right? Those kinds of things. So that's why I wrote down the shift protocol, or the training protocol, so that they'd have all that information. But it just gets diluted and diluted. We had a lead worker this year who she's just graduated, and I think that her information of how to be lead worker had been very diluted. So she's gone, and we have a new person starting in the fall. And when she starts, I'm going to train her. So we'll get back to square one, back to the basics of how to do everything. Hospitalization, I talked about the double dipping, endless agency paperwork. It just never stops. Okay, so this is a story about 7 years ago. Jacob's supports coordinator, who's supposed to be coordinating his supports through the agency and is not the best person in the world to do that, told us that they were going to remove Jacob's nighttime funding. Just categorically said that. And I said, Jacob needs someone with him at night. You know, if he gets up, if he, wanders off. And she said, well, they're going to give him an open phone line. So he can go up and say, hey, I need help, and they'll send someone. I said, you've been his supports coordinator for 10 years, and you don't know that he's deaf? And it was ridiculous. Other supports coordinators advocated for their clients, but she did not. And so they took away his nighttime services. We paid for it for over a year. We paid all our staff to stay with him, and we sued the agency. And it went to federal court, which is just below the Supreme Court, right? No? Just above the state court, okay. But eventually it would get to the Supreme Court if it didn't get resolved in the United States. So he and another young man were in the same situation. They took away his nighttime services. He was a young man with severe cerebral palsy. He couldn't get up to go push the button, right? It was ridiculous. Same coordinator. So we ended up spending a ton of money to go to this federal court. We won in the end. It changed the policy for the whole state, which was really great. Jacob made an impact, or we did, or whatever. Cost us so much money. We got the money back over time. It was a ridiculous stressor on top of everything we're already dealing with. I talked about the spending down of his money when he has too much money. There's a new law in the United States called the ABLE Act, where people with disabilities are allowed to have a savings account and save up to $100,000. So we haven't done that yet, but I think it might be a good idea for Jacob to take some of the money when I need to spend it down and put it in there. He can invest it, save it for later. And then finally, the guardianship and having a standby guardian. This is a lot of what we were talking about in yesterday's session with the adults, the older adults. So Jacob has 3 brothers. 2 are married. 4 brothers, sorry. Wait, Aaron, Seth, oh yeah, 4 brothers. 2 are married. I have always been reluctant, as we talked about yesterday in the session, to burden them, to ask them to be his guardian. You want all of your children to have good, full lives, and you don't want them to feel like they have to take this on. I'm sure a lot of you have had this feeling. Even though we didn't choose it, right? We had to take it on. We didn't have a choice. Maybe being a sibling, they don't have a choice either. I've started to kind of change my thinking about that. Anyway, I was so worried about it. And then this past year, as they've all gotten older, the youngest is 27, they are arguing over who will get to do it. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that, this problem just sort of went away. None of them really wants to be his hands-on guardian and do all the things I do, but they all want to be able to make decisions about his life. So I think we'll probably make all 3 of them co-guardians. One will take care of financial decisions. One will take care of philosophical decisions. One will take care of things that happen at home. because that's what all their strengths are. And one of them actually lives in our town. But this woman right here, April, she's the one who's been with him for 14 years. She's a special education teacher in our town. She just got married and has a child who's almost 2 years old. And all along, she has said that she would take over my role. She considers Jacob her brother, and she will care for him on the ground. So she wouldn't be his legal guardian, because his family should be his legal guardian. But she will take over what I do, the hiring, the coming to staff meetings, the trainings, all the things that I do, she's willing to do. And we have set aside money for her to do that because she's a special ed teacher. She gets paid next to nothing. So we will give her $15,000 a year or something like that to do all the things that I do, take care of him. It's just a perfect situation as long as she stays alive. Yeah, so that will work out well. And I keep asking her, asked her after she got married and had a child, are you sure you still want to do this? And she said, yes, I've talked to my husband and we're all in. We would even bring Jacob home if we needed to. So that really has helped me to feel okay about his future. I have 2 minutes? Okay, this will be quick. We have a Medicaid inviolable trust. What that means is we have all of our money put into trust, and we have a good bit of money set aside because in 1992, 2 of our children were killed in a car accident. And so we got a large settlement from Chrysler Corporation for that. And that's always been kept for just in case for Jacob and for our other children. And so all the money goes into the trust, and it's a special needs trust so that if he gets the money from it, it won't take away his ability to still receive his Medicaid funding. Okay, so that's been really nice. And his brothers would oversee that trust. And finally, this letter of intent. I've got the link right there. Whoops, what happened? Oh, okay. The link says specialneedsplanning.com. It's a financial group that help you with special needs planning, and they do charge you a fee, but this particular thing is for free if you can find it on their website. And all you have to do is send them your email, and they'll send you a link to it. You can download it. And what it is, it's a document where you write down everything you want for your child. I can put in all his medicines, all his medical problems, his history. I can put in everything I want for him to stay in his own home, the way he should live, the way he should work, how it should all be individualized and person-centered. And it gets attached to my will. So if I die, they have to follow the letter of intent, the guardian. So I've got the link to it here. If you have to kind of move around in that website till you find it. But it's beautiful. I've had it on my desktop for 2 years because it's kind of daunting to think about filling it out. And I kept thinking, when I retire, I'll fill it out. So now is the time because I just retired. But I started, and it's like, who's going to be his guardian? What do you want their roles to be? How do you want Jacob to live? What are his medications? What are his medical things? And it just puts down everything you would want people to know so that you don't have to worry about passing that information on. So that also gives me a lot of peace of mind, that and April. So that's it. I know this isn't always possible for everyone, but hopefully it will give you some ideas of some futures that could be possible. Any questions?
It's not really a question, but I'm glad to hear that people with disability can now save up to $100,000. We are saving money for Julian too, for later in life, and we've been reprimanded by the court that he has too much money. There's a cap in Germany by law. It can't be more than 10,000 euros. And now we have to find different approaches and ways to provide financial security for him in the future. And he has 2 younger brothers too. And I spoke to my sons from father to son, and I asked them whether they would be willing to take on responsibility for him in the future. Not that he should go and live with them, but that they make sure that he has assistance and that everything is taken care of medically. And we're only 55 now, but you never know what could happen one day. So I think it's really important to have this letter of intent and to think about these things now so that you're prepared for when the time comes.
Yes, good point. It just makes you feel better, too. Because as I know, because of our car accident, anything could happen any day, you know. So it's really nice to have that like peace of mind, as I said.
Ja, mit Blick auf die Uhr.
So I'm looking at my watch, and we're out of time. So thank you very much, Nancy.
Wir würden ganz kurz
We're going to take a quick break to swap presentations and have a 15-minute break before Tim comes and speaks to us next.